gentlemen, to a very special edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by four of the brightest minds that are covering the NBA draft, as well as Jeff Goodman, who somehow got on the Zoom and got on this call and got on the show. I don't know who let him in here, but we're going to put together a full first round mock draft. This is the way it's going to work. This is what's going to happen. There are six of us here. Each of us have been assigned 5 first round picks. We will each make those picks as if we are the GM of those organizations. It might be what we would do in those spots. It might be trying to project what that team will do. The only real rule is don't do anything that is too crazy, only a little bit crazy. Let me introduce my panel. We have Sam Vecenie, a draft correspondent for The Athletic and the host of the Game Theory podcast. We have Jeremy Woo, who is Sports Illustrated's NBA draft insider. We have Matt Babcock, who is a basketball lifer and the senior draft analyst for basketballnews.com. He's also a former NBA agent. We have Ryan McDonough, who spent a decade in Boston and Phoenix in different NBA front offices. And we also have Jeff Goodman, who does one mock draft and calls himself a stadium insider. Before we get into the meat of this, I want to give each of you guys a chance to give me like a 30-second, 35,000-foot take on this draft. Is it good? Is it great? Is it deep? Is it horrible? Sam, I'm going to you down in Australia first.
Yeah, I think that I have more of a top 4 than a top 3. I don't have any of these top 4 guys on the same level as Cade Cunningham. I think that there were 3 guys last year that probably would have gone ahead of any of the top 4 in this class, and Evan Mobley and Jalen Green as well. But I do think that all 4 of the top players, Chet Holmgren, Paulo Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Jaden Ivey, all have legitimate, realistic all-star upside. And the top 4 teams in this class, I think, should be very excited to be at the top of this draft.
Jeremy, what about you?
Yeah, when we talk about like, is a draft good? Like, I think at this point in the process, it's better to just look at like the top, right? Because it's at a certain point, it's all kind of fit, and guys always hit at a certain point, and we won't know until later. But I think there's probably a dozen guys who are like pretty good prospects. Like, I kind of agree with what Sam said about the top 4, but then just in terms of the top, like in any draft, those would be 10 to 12 guys who'd be in the consideration for the top 15, 20 picks. So in that respect, I don't think it's bad. But then it's real muddy, like going through 16 to even 45, 50. There's not a lot separating a lot of these guys. So that I think is going to be the challenging part. And teams are still kind of, I think, figuring that part out right now too.
Ryan, I want to ask you something just a little bit different. You've been in these draft rooms. Let's pretend this is the real draft night. Let's pretend you're the number 1 team on the clock. Let's pretend that you have to make a decision. What is going through your mind? What are the conversations that are happening in those draft rooms?
Yeah, Rob, if you have the number 1 pick, usually it's already been decided who you take. I can remember a few examples where that wasn't the case. In fact, Cleveland in 2013, my first draft as GM of the Suns, seemed like they were still deliberating on the clock when Anthony Bennett went number 1. But most of the time it's decided in advance. The NBA gives you 5 minutes in the actual draft to make your pick. Usually what most teams do is wait 2 or 3 minutes to call the pick in, even if they know, because for TV, the NBA wants the pick spaced out and they don't announce it till 5 minutes have passed. So basically what you try to do is have your list of players you would trade the pick for, or different combinations, already decided in advance if you're picking number 1. So there's no scrambling on the clock. If somebody calls in with a last minute trade, you basically know whether you do it or not. It's very rare that it happens at the last minute, but every once in a while you do get a call out of the blue. That being said, you wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and with a minute or 2 left, so there's no uncertainty, you call in the pick and let the league know who you're taking so they can get the card to the commissioner.
Matt, I want to ask you,
Ryan. Ryan, I have a quick question for you on that. How much misinformation are you putting out when you have the number 1 pick to try to, again, increase the trade value of that pick?
I think a decent amount, especially in a draft like this one where it's relatively flat. And to be honest, the years you want the number 1 pick, I think, are when it's obvious, right? You want the number 1 pick when it's LeBron James or Anthony Davis or Tim Duncan. Not that it's ever a bad thing to have a number 1 pick, but you want it less when it's relatively flat. And I agree with Sam's assessment. I don't think this is, 1, 2, 3 player of the draft. For me, there are 4 guys that I think, you do it in the NBA front offices in tiers. I think there's a drop after that first tier of 4, in my opinion. So that's the challenge. And that's what Orlando's going through right now. It seems like the consensus is Jabari Smith. Chet Holmgren obviously has some smoke as well. But, look, I don't think it would be out of left field if they pick Paulo Banchero or Jaden Ivey or, probably one of those 4 guys. So that's the challenge. You want teams thinking that you may draft any of them. So if they want one particular guy, they need to give a lot of value to get up and get the pick.
Matt, you've been on the agent side of the business. What are the conversations like between an agent and client? How stressful is that? What are you telling your guys when they are in these situations where they don't know where they're going to be living for the next 4 years of their life?
I mean, it's a case by case situation. Every player's situation is different. But generally speaking, going into the draft, that there's a lot of pressure. I mean, even when a player has a guarantee, you're counting on this GM's going to, stick to their word. And, so the week of the draft, an agent generally will feel a lot of pressure that there's a lot to do. 99% of the work's already been done. And so, the work in the phones, I mean, a lot of it is just spinning your wheels. A lot of it's, most of it's out of your hands at that point. There are some stuff in the second round. I mean, talking about guys, for draft and stash, now two-way contracts, stuff like that. But most of the work's done at this point.
Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel if you are watching this right now. If you're listening to this on a podcast, wherever it is, make sure you subscribe to our channels. That's the best way to help us grow this content and grow this space. We are presented by our partners over at Bet Rivers, and that means that it is time for us to get into this mock draft. So coming up first with the #1 overall pick, we have Orlando on the clock, and that is going to be one Jeremy Woo making the #1 overall pick. There's a lot of pressure here, Jeremy. A lot of pressure on this decision.
Oh, yeah, no, this is an easy one for me. I'm taking Jabari Smith. Not going to think about this too hard. For me, he's been the guy, since December when I went to see him. I didn't know as much about him coming into the season. Really got familiar with him, and I spent some time at Auburn, and I'm really convinced that he's the guy. To me, he's in a tier of his own ahead of the other three guys at the top. I think his shooting is just such a special skill. It's going to be really hard to block. I think we're overthinking the whole dribbling aspect of it, just because it's going to be easy for him to get it off. And I think a creative coach will find ways for it to work. And, knowing what we know about him as a defender and as a person and how much he cares and how much of a perfectionist he is and how hard he works. Like, if I'm Orlando, I just think he's the guy who I want to sort of set the culture, and I'm willing to grow with Jabari as my guy. So he's my pick at #1.
So I want to know from any of you guys, is there anyone that would not take Jabari #1? Sam, I know that you are in the camp of Chet and Jabari are kind of on that same tier. Who are you going with #1 overall?
Well, it's interesting, and this is something I wanted to pose to Ryan, because I think that you guys had a situation a couple years ago with Luka Doncic versus DeAndre Ayton. How much do you care about fit when considering the #1 overall pick? Are you just take the best guy, the guy that's #1 on your board, or you just, at the end of the day, you have to consider, hey, we have Devin Booker already, and do we need another ball handler in here? Is there a better fit with a center maybe that can fit with us, right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that factors in more, Sam, on the team side than from what I've seen on mock drafts. You need obviously a balanced, competitive team, offense, defense, rebounding, passing, all those kind of things. So, part of our thought process, right or wrong, and keep in mind there was some discrepancy, right? I got fired in preseason, and Igor Koshkov got fired after 1 year.
Yeah.
But part of our thought process was the balance, with Devin Booker in the backcourt, DeAndre Ayton in the front court, rebounding, defense, defensive potential. Obviously, he wasn't a great defender at U of A, certainly improved in that area. And then, just the physical anchor on the interior. And then after we got Ayton, getting Bridges on the wing in that same draft to put in between them, we thought that was, obviously criticized. Luka's been phenomenal. Those three guys and the Suns have done pretty well collectively. So that's why one of the things why it's so hard for a team. You're not drafting, in a vacuum, or it's easy to go. I think sometimes go back and nitpick and say, well, it should have been this guy. You need to bake all of that in and figure out when you hand the ball to the coach in training camp and say, look, play these guys, figure out how to play them together. How is it all going to work? And how are the guys going to complement each other?
Right. And I think at the end of the day, that's why I was I think I would, at the end of the day, if I was Orlando, probably consider Jabari Smith over Chet, despite the fact that I might have Chet at #1 on my board.
So there it is. Jabari Smith, #1 overall pick, which means we're going to the #2 pick, which is Jeff Goodman drafting for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I have no idea where this one's going to go. We have our confirmed loose cannon making the #2 overall pick.
Yeah, I'm not going Shaden Sharp, so you don't have to worry about that. Even though I'm usually concerned. And I do have a little bit of a love affair with Shaden Sharp, the mystery man of this year's draft. But listen, Sam Presti's got a tough decision on his hands here. He really does. I mean, they need a lot. We know that. They've got about, 104 picks over the next 6 drafts, first-round picks. He stockpiled them kind of like Danny Ainge did a few years ago, and eventually he'll probably start moving them. But listen, on this pick, it's Chet or Paolo, and you couldn't look at two different players in scenarios, right? I mean, Paolo is the ultimate. You kind of know what you're going to get. He's going to come in and make an impact right away, and I think he's going to impact winning right away. Big, strong, athletic, fairly tough. And you got Chet, who, if you're a GM, you're scared as hell to pick because of looking at his body, but you're even more scared not to pick, because if you miss on a guy that's going to be a franchise player and a unicorn of sorts, and he can stay healthy and add 30 pounds, you could be looking at a dude that is like Porzingis-like in the offensive end and a hell of a lot better than Porzingis in the defensive end. He could be a dominant defender if he puts on 30 pounds. So I think here, if I'm Sam Presti and I'm Oklahoma City and I'm a small market, I roll the dice. I roll the dice and I take a swing on Chet Holmgren rather than going with Paolo, who I think will be an all-star. But again, with Chet, yeah, I mean, listen, you might get a guy who's out of the league in a few years because he can't put on and sustain the weight and physicality of the league. Or you may get a guy who's an NBA star.
So just so everyone that's watching this knows, we told our panel to have a pick made in 30 to 45 seconds. Goodman just rolled 2.5 minutes making the pick for Chet Holmgren. Matt, we got about 30 seconds. What's your take? Is that the right decision or the wrong decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable take. I mean, that's what everybody's projecting is going to actually happen. I do think it's a tough decision, and it's a good problem to have if you're Oklahoma City and you're Sam Presti, because I think between Chet, Paulo, and Jaden Ivey, all three are exceptional talents with a lot of upside, just all very different. It's sort of a pick your poison type of deal. Me personally, I really like Jaden Ivey. I think his upside is through the roof. Just his athleticism and burst makes him potentially special. But again, I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong decision here.
All right, so we are now moving on to the number 3 pick in this draft, which is going to be the Houston Rockets. That pick is going to be made by Sam Vecenie. And Sam, I think I know where you're going to go with this pick.
Yeah, I just want to note that I was the one that was worried coming into this about being long-winded in my answers. And then we have Goodman roll for 2.5 minutes. Look, this is an easy one for me. It's Paolo Banchero at number 3. Houston just needs talent at the end of the day. I don't love the fit of Alperen Şengün and Paolo Banchero in the front court, but I'm not convinced we've seen enough from Alperen Şengün on the defensive end to know for sure that he can be the kind of guy that can play in a playoff series quite yet. So at the end of the day, I'm taking the guy that I think is the best fit with Jalen Green, because that two-man game, I think, between Jalen Green and Paolo Banchero has a chance to be genuinely special. Paolo Banchero's passing ability, I think, is maybe the most underrated skill that any player has in this class. Being able to run these inverted actions, 4-1, 1-4 ball screens with Jalen Green is going to be really, really special in my opinion. And I just am such an enormous fan of the mismatch nightmares that he's going to create on the offensive end for the Houston Rockets. So it's easy. It's Paolo Banchero at number 3 for the Houston Rockets.
Ryan, how do you feel about that?
It seemed like that's exactly what Houston's thinking. I'm seeing some of the reporting from Jonathan Givony and others last night. They made the deal yesterday with the Dallas Mavericks to bring in Christian Wood. Send out Christian Wood, freeing up some space in the front court, getting a pick later in the 20s, and then a bunch of expiring contracts, some or all of which they'll probably waive. They did it, I think, to move Wood out and to get a later pick. So for me, it knows they know they have their guy. And at 3, they know they're going to get one of these guys, right? If the order's jumbled in the top 2, if Holmgren or Smith slides, it seems like they're comfortable taking them. But I imagine the draft's going to go exactly the way the actual draft next week is going to go exactly the way that our first 3 picks have gone.
That's because we have the best experts covering the draft here. So it's probably going to be exactly the way that we roll this out. You got about 30 seconds here, Jeremy. I want to know, how do you think that fit between Jalen Green and Paolo Banchero is going to work? Are there enough shots to go around between those two?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think one of the sort of underrated things about Paolo, who I have at number 2 on my own board, is he can play both ends of the two-man game, right? Like he can be the screener and he can be dangerous, or he can bring the ball up. Like they did that a little bit at Duke with Mark Williams screening for him. So like, I think with Jalen as a player, as talented as he is, I think you get 2 guys like that and you try to get them to build chemistry, and I think it can work. Like they're both unselfish enough. And particularly Paolo, like as Sam said, he's a really, really good passer, which sometimes gets lost in the whole dialogue about him. So I don't see why it can't work. You have to figure out what to put around them. But those two guys together, I wouldn't have any concerns about now.
So the top three in this draft, I think all of us kind of agree are a consensus, which means we're moving to the number 4 pick. We're moving to Sacramento, where you never really know what's going to end up happening with the way that they draft. So Ryan, this is on you. There's a lot of pressure, man. This is the first decision point and inflection point of this draft. Who are you going with number 4?
And Rob, that's why when Jeff asked me to do this mock draft, I said, I'll do it, but I want the 4th pick. To me, this is where the excitement begins. The top 3 went according to form. Obviously, Sac made a big deal last year, bringing in Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. As we know, they unfortunately have the longest playoff drought in NBA history, which they would like to end. So I'm going to throw a curveball here. I'm going to trade this pick to Indiana for Tyrese Halliburton. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep the pick and draft Jaden Ivey from Purdue. I understand that's controversial, given De'Aaron Fox's place on the roster, and given that a year ago they did something similar. In fact, in the last couple drafts, they drafted Halliburton, who was an excellent pick. Obviously, he's now in Indiana. And then a year ago, drafting Mitchell when they were backcourt heavy. But I give Monty McNair a lot of credit. It's not easy to do. He has drafted consistently. They've drafted the best player available, in my opinion. It just happens to be in the backcourt. So I'm going to do it again here. And I agree with what Matt said earlier about Jaden Ivey. I wouldn't at all be surprised as we look back on this draft in 5 or 10 years and say Jaden Ivey's the best player to come out of the draft class. I know those front court players are getting a lot of attention, but I think this kid's a Ferrari. I mean, the way he moves with the ball in his hands is different. It's Ja Morant-like, it's John Wall-like pre-injuries. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as those guys. Obviously, Morant is an MVP candidate, but this kid has a special gear. And I think with the way the NBA is going and the lack of contact with the ball handler, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to stay in front of Jaden Ivey.
As the guy picking number 5 for Detroit, I am right now absolutely devastated. Matt, I'm going to go to you real quick on this. How do you fit all of those guards together in the backcourt? How do you make that work?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a great fit. And on our mock draft on Basketball News, I do have Jaden Ivey going number 4. I think this is a strong candidate to a pick that could be moved. I know there's a lot of teams that feel the same way that Ryan and I do about Ivey. And I've heard the exact phrase Ferrari when describing him before too. And so I have a hard time seeing Ivy slipping past 4, but I'm not sure it'll be to Sacramento. So we'll see.
Sam, any takes on this? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to agree with what Matt said in that I don't think the 3 picks get traded. The first 3 picks get traded, as we said here a week before the draft. I think this pick is very much in play for all the reasons I mentioned. Sacramento wants to win. They have a backcourt in place with Fox and Mitchell. If they can get a win now player, I think they trade out, they drop down. They want to win, and this pick has a lot of value to the other 29 teams.
So I will be making the 5th pick in this draft, and one of the things that I have written down for Detroit is find a way to get Jaden Ivey. I think that with the Pistons, you have Cade Cunningham, and I think Cade Cunningham is going to end up being a superstar as this thing kind of plays out. I think you build everything around him, and then kind of figure out everything else beyond that. I think Cade and Jaden, to me, is the perfect combination in the backcourt. So if you can find a way to get up to the 4th pick to get Jaden Ivey, if you're Detroit, I think that's what you do. Beyond that, their needs. They need talent, they need athleticism, and they need shooting. I think that Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant are kind of nice pieces, nice rotational pieces, nice guys to put around someone like a Cade Cunningham. I'm not sold on Killian Hayes. I wasn't sold on him before the draft. I'm not sold on him now after his first 2 seasons in the league. I think you do eventually need a pick and roll lob threat for Cade Cunningham. I don't think Marvin Bagley or Isaiah Stewart are going to be the answer long-term there. So at this point, given who's on the board, I think I would go with Keegan Murray simply because of the fact that he's 6'8". He's got a pretty good wingspan. He's a very good shooter. We know he's a scorer. And the idea of being able to put Cade Cunningham out there with Keegan Murray and Jeremy Grant, assuming he's back, and Sadiq Bey, all of a sudden you have 4 guys that are pretty switchable, that are all 6'8", that all have pretty good wingspans, that can all kind of make shots. And all of a sudden you have a lot of space to let your superstar operate. I didn't see anybody react too crazily to that. So I'm going to go to you, Jeff. Tell me why I'm dumb. That's what you're the best at.
I can do that well. But here, listen, in terms of fit, you're right. I think Keegan Murray is the safest pick, and he fits what they need the most. Again, to me, the hard thing for Troy Weaver here is going to be passing on a kid like Shaden Sharp, who you don't know enough about, right? There's so many mysteries with him. You haven't seen him. He looks great in a workout, especially if he's making shots in that workout, which I've heard he's done enough of them. So that's what I'd be worried about. But yes, I think Keegan Murray is a solid pick, but again, probably swinging for a double instead of maybe swinging for what could potentially be a home run.
Yeah, Jeremy, I want to ask you about that real quick. What do you think his ceiling is? We got about 30 seconds here before we got to get to the 6th pick.
Yeah, the player that I've used, I think, a lot with Keegan is like John Collins in terms of like, not like a direct comparison, but in terms of like the productivity that he brings. And like, you can debate, how valuable, Collins is, and obviously he's a guy who's come up as a trade possibility, but like, I don't see how, any issue with Keegan as far as just getting to that level, just because he plays so hard. He fits with so many different types of players. He's active. I actually think he's an underrated athlete. Like, having seen him a few times this year, he moves better than you think. He gets off the floor pretty quick. So I think there's enough there with the shooting and the rebounding that he's a pretty productive player, if not an all-star. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think he could end up being a Cam Johnson kind of a guy at the next level. Just hangs around the league for 12 years. All right, pick number 6. We have the Indiana Pacers on the clock, and Matt Babcock, I am going to you.
No, thanks, Rob. Hey, first of all, I'm disappointed in your pick, because if I'm the Pacers, I want Keegan Murray in the worst way. I think he fits that team so perfectly as a face-up four. They've got, somewhat of a logjam on the perimeter. I think there's questions whether Brogdon or Buddy Hield are going to stick there long-term. So for me, if I'm looking at the Pacers, I'm going with the best player on the board to me is Benedict Mathurin. I was tempted by Shaden Sharp's upside, but Mathurin has upside, and I think he's somewhat of a safe pick. Just an incredible athlete that shoots the ball well, and I think he's got potential to be a good defender. Some people might think I'm a little bit of a homer since I'm a U of A alum like you, Jeff. So, but I'm going with Benedict Mathurin.
Goodman, I'm going to you first on this one. That's your boy. That's your Wildcat right there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a hell of a pick, and not because he's an Arizona Wildcat, just because, again, you look at what he can be, right? I mean, he's got the size. He's the prototypical wing. And the biggest thing that he did was he expanded his game this past year. He went from a guy that was, to me, kind of a, single dimensional, just a shooter. He was a spot up shooter his freshman year. And now he started to put the ball on the floor, get some confidence, exploded the basket. If he could take that jump and be even more confident, I think he could be an all-star potential guy, where Shaden Sharp has that. But again, Shaden, and we're going to keep going through it every pick here. It's just who's
you're
going
to
take the risk.
You're going to every pick. You're going to say Shaden Sharp, every single one until they get.
But every GM is here because they don't have enough information on him with their own eyes.
We'll talk about Shaden when he ends up getting drafted. I want to make one point real quick on Mathurin. Sam, he is a guy that is 6 weeks younger than Chet Holmgren. He's a sophomore, 6 weeks younger than Chet Holmgren. How much does age play into this?
Yeah, I think that we're all just like kind of acting like Ben Mathurin is this safe pick without any upside. And like, he's like in the Keegan Murray class. He's like you said, 6 months younger than Chet Holmgren. He's like 6 months or 7 months older than Dyson Daniels. He's freshman age. Like, this is a really young player that has substantial upside. On top of that, I think his growth trajectory over the course of the last few years. I mean, this is a kid that was in Montreal, then went down to the NBA Academy down in Mexico City, and then went to Arizona, and there was an adjustment period when he got to Arizona. Like, I think that as he continues to get comfortable, gets more mature in the game of basketball, there is real potential for growth here with Ben Mathurin, given his athleticism particularly.
So we are now on to pick number 7. My heart palpitated there for a minute because we lost Jeremy, but now he's back to make the number 7 pick for the Portland Trail Blazers. Jeremy, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Yeah. I'm excited about this one. Dyson Daniels is going to be my pick here at number 7. One of my favorite guys in the whole draft. Someone who I think is like still kind of underrated. Like, I feel like his stock, went up around the combine, but at the same time, like, I don't know if he's like fully appreciated in terms of like, I just think his ability to play on the ball, play off the ball, defend, but I think potentially 4 positions. I think he's big enough and tough enough that he'll, eventually defend 4s in small lineups. Like that's like a dream, player for the playoffs with the way, things are being played right now. You can't play him off the floor. You can play different guys next to him. He can get the ball at the court, and, picking here for Portland, knowing that they are, trying to keep this thing alive with Damian Lillard for as long as he is, healthy and in his prime. I think having a big ball handler like Dyson who can, bring the ball up and allow Dame to kind of play off, but also give them a lot of defensive cover because they're going to need it with Dame on the court. I think it's a perfect fit. So if they don't trade this pick, which I would have wanted to do if you guys had let me, but you didn't. So I'm taking Dyson, and I feel pretty good about it, I think, here.
Ryan, I want to ask you real quick about this. How do you balance, if you're in a situation like the Trailblazers are, where you have an aging superstar and you're kind of in win now mode, you're also drafting a lottery, which means you weren't very good. How do you balance trying to improve, shooting for the moon, while also being able to win in the immediate term?
I think there are 2 paths, Rob, and it seems like they've already chosen their path, which was to hit the bottom quickly and then try to come right back up. Last year, the other path is a full-blown rebuild. In that case, I think Damian Lillard would go out. It doesn't seem like they're interested in doing that. So in this case, I agree. Like I think Seven's very much in play. We've heard the rumors with Detroit and Jeremy Grant. I like Dyson Daniels a lot, as a player. And this range of the draft guys, just kind of broadly speaking, is really, really interesting to me, because this is where the variance comes in, right? We had those top 4 guys that I think are relatively consensus. You have a safe player like Keegan Murray. And then really this mid-lottery to me is all about your risk tolerance. Jeff's boy, Shaden Sharp, is the most risky, maybe has the most upside. Dyson Daniels, Mathurin, others in that range as well. So this is where the draft gets fascinating to me in this mid-lottery. And I wouldn't be at all surprised. We talked about a Sacramento at 4 with Portland to 7, if these picks get moved around on or prior to draft night.
Goodman, you got about 20 seconds here. G League Ignite program. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for basketball?
I don't know. I don't care, but I know Jason Hart really likes Dyson Daniels, and he coached him. So that's the biggest thing to me, is Jason Hart really liked his work ethic. Said he shot it better towards the end of the season. So I trust Hart in his assessment.
That's how it goes with us. I don't know. I don't care. That's what I get from Goodman when I ask him questions. All right, Jeremy, we are going back to you. We had a little bit of an issue with the picks getting traded the day before this mock draft was to happen. So Jeremy's making back-to-back picks. You have the New Orleans Pelicans at number 8. Who do you got, Jeremy? Mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I was on mute. I couldn't. I'm just so excited to take another Jeremy here. I'm taking Jeremy Sohan from Baylor, who is, another guy who I really like. I think probably a little bit, maybe more controversial here at this spot. But I love the energy he brings. I love the way he kind of is in the middle of every play. He's not a guy who's going to have to score a lot early to be valuable. But the other stuff he does is going to get him in the game and give him a chance to develop and get a lot of minutes. Like, it's not a direct comparison, but if you look at sort of the success Scotty Barnes had as a rookie, Scotty's a different level, I think, of prospect, but just, it was clear that the stuff he did so well, it was important to have him in the game for Toronto. And I think Sohan, can have that sort of similar effect where, he might play more than you think, and he might be better than you think the more you play him, as a guy who can switch, who plays really hard, who I think is eventually going to shoot. He's a good passer. I see a little bit of like Joakim Noah in him in a weird way, just with sort of just the vibe he brings and sort of the way he, picks up his teammates. And I was also there for his best game of the season when they played at Baylor, or Baylor played Kansas in Waco, and I was there for that. So that kind of swayed me. So that's my pick.
I know you are
better hair for that, Jeremy, by the way.
Debatable. I think that's debatable. Look around the room.
Sam, I know you are a certified Jeremy Sohan stan, so I want to know your take on this young man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have Jeremy in a very similar, area of the draft to where Jeremy Woo does, and I love him defensively. He's a legit 1 through 5 switch defender, and those guys are in precious few commodities in today's NBA. Jeremy brought up Scotty Barnes, and even Scotty struggled with guards this year in the NBA occasionally. And I think that Jeremy Sohan is a bit better defensively than Scotty is. The thing is that he's not quite as good offensively. The thing that I particularly like about this fit in New Orleans, though, is that New Orleans loves these guys that are super versatile, positionally versatile, and then they think that they can teach them to shoot at some point because Fred Vincent is there. He's one of the best shooting coaches in the NBA. And I think that this would be my ideal landing spot for Jeremy Sohan. Like if I was picking purely on behalf of the prospect as opposed to on behalf of the team, I would love for Jeremy Sohan to end up in New Orleans.
You got about 10 seconds. Why?
Just because of the shooting. I think he'd really absolutely be able to improve the shooting a little bit quicker here.
All right. Well, Jeremy Sohan is off the board at number 8. I am picking number 9 for the San Antonio Spurs. And my decision, I don't know if this is what they would actually do, but I think that the Spurs are very much in talent acquisition mode. I think they need to add good basketball players and as many good basketball players as I can, because if you look at their roster, I think that they're kind of lacking in good basketball players, which is a problem when you're playing in the National Basketball Association. I think DeJounte Murray has been he's been good. He's been a little bit of a pleasant surprise. And I think they have a lot of wings and a lot of guards on their roster. So again, picking a wing and a guard and a guy that's going to kind of play the same position as maybe a Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell and Alani Walker is maybe not exactly what they would do. But again, just acquire talent, which is why I am taking Jeff Goodman's favorite player, Shaedon Sharpe, with the number 9 pick to San Antonio. Goodman, I'm going to open the floor to you. This is your guy. You love him. You are on the record saying that he is better than Zion Williamson. So take it away.
More impactful. If he had stayed in college, he would have won more tournament games than Zion Williamson. That's what I said.
This is an insane take, by the way.
I agree.
It would have been true. He listen, Shaedon Sharpe to me, I think has a chance to be the best player to come out of this draft. I really believe that.
What percent chance?
I don't know what percent, 12%. No, I don't know. But listen, all I'm saying is Shaedon Sharpe in the right situation, I think can be a hell of an NBA player. I'm not sure San Antonio is the right situation because he's going to have to deal with DeJounte Murray having the ball in his hands. So I don't think he's going to see the ball a whole hell of a lot, number one. Number two, I don't think he's going to be set up to succeed. Not a lot of talent, but I think he put up numbers there. I think you get a hell of a second contract because he put up big time numbers for a team that's not going to win a lot of games. But what Shaedon Sharpe is a 6'6" wing who, if he works his ass off, will be able to score from all 3 levels. And that's the biggest question I have for him. And that's the biggest question NBA guys have as well. Work ethic. Will he work hard enough to become a really, really good NBA player?
Yeah, Ryan, when you're making a pick on someone that's coming out of high school, I don't know if you've ever had to do that, but there's so much that's unknown. How do you go evaluating a player?
He did with the Celtics.
Yeah. How do you go evaluating a player like this?
My first 3 years with the Celtics, Rob, when I was working alongside Danny Ainge in the front office, we drafted Kendrick Perkins, Al Jefferson, and Gerald Green, 2003 to 2005, and then they changed the rules. It's very difficult. To Jeff's point, you have such limited information. Probably actually more about Shaedon Sharpe now than you did about those guys because the video quality is so much better, more reliable stats from the AAU circuit. But this is a gamble, and this is a home run swing. I will say this relative to San Antonio. There are questions about when Pop's going to retire. If they draft Shaedon Sharpe, he may just do it and say, you know what, I'm not going to see this. I'll hand it off to Quinn Snyder or somebody else. Let him develop this kid.
All right, Ryan, we are going right back to you with pick number 10, the Washington Wizards. What do? You got Brad Beal there, and I don't know about all that much else. So where are you going with this number 10 pick?
Yeah, this may surprise some people. I guess we're getting to the range now where there's probably more variance on different people's draft boards at 10. I'm going to go with another wing out of the Big 12, Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas. I really like this kid. I mean, his productivity speaks for itself. And I like the fit a lot in Washington. I think he's exactly what the Wizards need. They need a versatile wing. They need who can shoot it, who can defend, and also, frankly, can play right away. Given Brad Beal, I'm thinking everything I've heard that Brad Beal's going to re-sign the deal, long-term max deal in Washington with the Wizards. But as you guys know, in today's NBA, that doesn't mean a whole lot. Just because he signs it doesn't mean he's going to be there for 5 years or whatever it is. So I really like Agbaji. I think he's underrated relative to some of the other prospects in this draft. I know he's a 4-year college player, and executives, including myself, tend to pick apart these kind of guys. Most outstanding player in the Final Four on the best team in the country. I like his strength. I like his athleticism. I really like that he improved as a three-point shooter. I thought he could make shots off the catch or off the dribble, has the potential to be a good on-ball defender. So this may not be a grand slam pick, but I think you're getting a solid rotational player who could be a starter and is a perfect positional fit for the Washington Wizards.
Matt, let me ask you a question. So Ochai Agbaji was one of the most improved players in college basketball last season. How do you evaluate a guy that may have already made his leap, or is he already a finished product of an NBA player?
I mean, it's different. I mean, he's definitely a plug and play guy. I mean, we've all followed him since he stepped foot at KU, and I mean, right off the bat, I mean, you're so impressive physically, and just continue to get better. I mean, I remember last year we had him projected as a second-round pick pretty much the entire year. He came back, and I was at that. I think Jeff, you're at this game. I think both of you guys were at this game opening night in Madison Square Garden. He was terrific and really never looked back the whole year. And so I don't know if there's a ton of upside, but I mean, the guy's going to be a good player. I mean, he's supposed to be a great kid, good athlete, and he does the number one thing. He shoots the ball. So, you know, I think it's maybe a touch high for him, but not a bad pick by any means.
Rob,
Jeff,
part of my thought process and my bias here is my last draft with the Phoenix Suns, we traded for Mikal Bridges, and I like Mikal better than this kid, but there's similar concerns about Mikal, you know, multi-year college player. What is his upside? How good can he be? Well, he was just second in the league for Defensive Player of the Year and is the best, you know, most versatile defender, one of the best 4 players on the best team in the league. I'm not saying Agbaji is going to be that, but I think often everybody, including myself in the draft, tends to pick apart some of the veteran guys and think they don't have the ability to continue to advance. And I think Agbaji is at least a solid starter on a decent team.
That was definitely what we would call a humble brag, saying that I was the guy that helped pick Mikal Bridges. So we are now on to pick number 11. Matt, I am going back to you. You are drafting for the New York Knicks. If you guys are watching this and you're a Knicks fan, make sure you hit that like button on this stream right now so Matt can pick the guy that you want.
They're probably not going to like it. I mean, I'm sure we all feel the same way. When we update our mock drafts, we always, you know, I always think twice about what I'm doing with the Knicks pick, because that's where I'm going to get roasted. So thanks for giving me this pick, guys. But yeah, with this pick, I mean, the Knicks need more talent, and I'm going with the best player on the board. I'm going with Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. I think he's the guy that probably peaked a little early during the season. I mean, he was getting some hype as a potential, top pick. I never really thought he was quite that, but he's a dang good player. 3-level scorer, and he is tough as heck. I mean, that guy really competes, defends, he rebounds. I think he's tough enough to handle the bright lights in New York and give them an additional piece as they continue to build.
Sam, we've talked about this off air. I'm curious, how do you see him fitting in the league? Is he a guy that can play the one? Is he a guy that can play off the ball? Is he a little bit of a tweener? Where do you see him best long term?
Yeah, I think he's definitely an off-ball, like 2 guard for sure. I was really happy that he measured really well at the combine. That was one concern that a lot of scouts had. Just how big is he? Is he, 6'3" without shoes on, or is he more in the 6'4.5" where he's 6'6" in shoes, and that might be okay for him to slide down to the 2 and the 3 defensively. I love his defense. I think that he's going to fit really, really well with Tom Thibodeau if he ends up in New York. He's the kind of guy that I think rookies have not tended to have a lot of success in the Thibodeau scheme and in the Thibodeau regimes that he's been a part of. But Johnny Davis is such a competitor that I can see that working. Yeah, I'm a fan of Johnny Davis. This probably would have been my pick as well. I think that under the bright lights of New York, he is someone that would absolutely succeed. He would thrive in that setting. So, whether or not it's a great fit with RJ Barrett, I think is something of a question, just given the fact that they both do like that mid-range area a little bit more than you would like to see from like a modern day offense, given that neither of them are like wildly explosive or phenomenal 3-point shooters. But, those are problems that you figure out down the road, I think.
Jeremy, we got about 40 seconds here. I'm going to go to you. He was the runner-up for National Player of the Year. How do you see that kind of impacting to the next level? We see a guy that's ready for the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with Johnny, and I say this having gone to like 11 Wisconsin games this year, which is probably more than I will ever go to in my life. I'm in Chicago, so it's a quick drive, but I think the intangibles are a really big part of the sell here. Like, you talked about, him versus Sharp versus Mathurin, those 3 guys. I mean, I think Sharp and Mathurin, it's easier to look at them and see, the athletic stuff, but Johnny's makeup is part of why he had such a good year battling through injuries. And I think it's going to matter at the next level as well.
And yeah, he's going to have to be ready for it because that New York media is going to be coming for him. Coming up, we have pick number 12. We are going to Jeff Goodman. We are going back to Oklahoma City. You didn't get your boy Shaden Sharp at number 2. Who are you taking at number 12?
Sam Presti has the worst shooting team in the NBA. The NBA, you don't win without shooters. And the best shooter maybe in this entire draft is AJ Griffin, who was injured coming into the season and still shot 45% from 3 this year at Duke without getting a ton of reps. You know, obviously he had to share the wealth with a lot of guys on that team, including Paolo, who we picked number 3 tonight. But I think Griffin's got the size. He can obviously shoot the hell out of the ball. I'm not sure if he's going to be like a 3-and-D guy, because I don't know how good a defender he's going to be at the next level. I think that's going to take time for him. But, you know, certainly Dad being a former NBA player and coach help with his transition and his readiness. But I think Oklahoma City's got to get a shooter, and AJ Griffin's the best shooter on the board.
Yeah, he's worked his way through some injuries over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. Even in the preseason, he had another knee injury. I think it was a meniscus, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't have it in front of me. Sam, I know you've talked at length about him. I know that he's a little bit of a polarizing guy. He could be one of the 3 or 4 best players in this draft. He could also be a guy that does nothing more than make threes and not guard. How do you feel about AJ?
Yeah, I think that you have to start with the shooting. Like Jeff said, he is a genuinely elite shooter. I think he's the second best shooting prospect in this draft behind Jabari Smith. And anytime that you can get that guy in the lottery, especially in the back half of the lottery, I have no problem doing it. Having said that, the reason that I don't have him as like the 5th or 6th guy, given the fact that he genuinely has a chance to be a high-level shot creator, is the defense. It's a real tools versus tape argument. He is 6'6". He is has like a 6'11" wingspan. He is very capable of down the road becoming a good defender. But the tape this year at Duke is horrible. Like, he is a very, very bad defender. He was this year, and that's okay. It's not to say that he will be long-term. He was an 18-year-old playing college basketball, but I didn't like the way that he fought through screens. I didn't like the way that he was aware and engaged off the ball. I thought that he just didn't really do a good job on the ball. Even like it was just a mess all across the board, and he has potential at some point to be a good defender. I'm not writing him off long-term. It's just the tape is not very good, and you have to gauge how to, you know, how you think he can grow on that end.
Matt, you got about 10 seconds. Wrap it up. Give me a take on AJ Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little one-dimensional, but the one thing he does is very valuable, is shooting the ball, and he's able to create his own shot too. He's got a sweet step back. But Sam, your concerns, I share the same.
All right. We are moving on to pick number 13. That is Jeremy. It is the Charlotte Hornets. They are building around LaMelo Ball. You have 2 picks, two of the next 3 picks if you're Charlotte, Jeremy. So as you kind of walk through making this pick, take me through the thought process of what happens when you have 2 picks that are that close.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, were we able to trade around, I would have looked to move at least one of these picks. I just think it's a good value proposition. And you kind of know, like, you know, you can think about it both ways. Like, you can trade 13, having like, look, obviously Charlotte needs a big. Cleveland, I don't know which of you has the Cleveland pick, but I doubt you're going to take a center, right? So like Jalen Duren and Mark Williams are both on the board right now. I don't have to take that guy right now. I can take that guy at 15. So like, knowing that we can't make trades, you know, I'm not going to take a big with this first pick. I'm probably going to take one at 15 in about 5 minutes. But, you know, here with 13, I'm just going to go, I think, straight upside here. I'm going to go with Ousmane Dieng. The NBL flavor will continue here in Charlotte. And I think, and he's a guy who definitely improved his standing with the NBA. Like at the middle of the year, I think people were not really sure what to make of his struggles in Australia or with the Breakers. His last 6 weeks were just much, much better. And you could see it on tape that was starting to click for him. And I think, with his size and length and smoothness, he doesn't have a lot of like athletic pop, but he can really pass. And I think he's going to shoot. And I think Nick Batum has been used as a comp by people, and that's kind of the idea. So I'm going to go with that. I just think having a big wing in Charlotte is kind of helpful with what's on the roster right now. And then I'll get my center in the next pick at 15.
Goodman, do you know anything about Ousmane Dieng?
Not enough. No, not enough. I know he came on late. I do know he came on late, but yeah, I was going to ask Jeremy more of and Sam and those guys, who is he like and what's his game all about. So you guys know more about
Sam,
him.
you're in Australia. You got about 45 seconds here. Just give me kind of the top down view of him.
The Australian correspondent. Let's go. I finally have use living over here. Look, I think that the Batum comparison is right. Just he's less athletic is kind of the issue. Nick Batum, when he got to the NBA, was an incredible athlete. And, you see similar processing speed, you see similar ability to handle the ball at 6'9" that Ousmane Dieng has. And that is valuable. And I think he has real defensive tools as well. It's just going to be a project. He's never, outside of these like last 6 weeks of his NBL season, hasn't really shot the ball consistently. So I think that that's going to be the key for him, just being able to shoot the ball consistently over the course of the early portion of his career.
So there you have it. Pick number 13, Ousmane Dieng from the New Zealand Breakers. Matt, we are going to you for pick number 14, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have a lot of interesting pieces. I think this is a team that could end up being pretty good pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Cleveland has done a great job of going into rebuild, and they're already competitive. I think they're ahead of schedule, really. And interestingly enough, I think their books are pretty clean as well. They're right at the cap. They got Kevin Love and LeVert's contracts coming off after this year. And they're able to add, another lottery pick here. I'm going to go with Malachi Branham, keep him in state in Ohio. And to me, he fits right in. I mean, I'm a big fan of Darius Garland. I think he's really made a huge jump this past year. He's great with the ball, very crafty, creator for himself and teammates. And they have a lot of lineup flexibility too. They played huge this year. They played Markkanen, Mobley, and Gerald Allen together a lot. And I think Branham's a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands to be efficient, be an efficient scorer. And so an off-ball scorer that's very mature and composed for a guy that's, coming off his freshman season, just a great fit all the way around.
Yeah, I think you also have enough good defenders on that team to make up for the fact that I don't think that Malachi Branham could guard anybody that is currently on this show. Ryan, I want to ask you this. So let's pretend that Jalen Duren went like number 11, right? And there's only one of those kind of elite centers on the board, and you want one if you're Charlotte. If you're Cleveland and you're picking 14, and you know that there's only one guy left, and Charlotte is picking 15, how much leverage do you use? How do you kind of move that around? How much does your phone ring? People looking for trades? Are you calling other people? Take me through those moments.
It's one of those situations, Rob, where as an executive, you try to get out ahead of it, especially if you're president or GM. If you see this scenario coming, you have the guys or women on your staff getting in touch with other teams, say, we're wide open, at pick 14, 15, whatever it is, bring us your best offer. We have you try to create this frenzy and let people know the pick is available. You're not really specific about what you're looking for, what you want. You just say, look, we've had previous conversations. We know you guys have interest in trading up. We will trade the pick. Bring us your best offer. And hopefully you have multiple offers to sift through. The thing, it's hard to do. I mean, you really have to have a lot of courage to do this, is if you draft a player you don't want, and then you think you can later flip them. I've seen teams get in trouble doing that. So usually as you see the draft unfold, you try to get out ahead of it. And then hopefully with the 5 minutes on the clock, say, let's put everything up on the board, weigh all these offers we have on the table versus picking a player, and then decide which path is best.
Matt, put yourself in Cleveland's shoes. Are you shopping this as much as you can? You got about 20 seconds here.
I mean, honestly, if I'm any team, I'm always shopping the pick and see what options are out there. I mean, I think that's a general manager's job is to continually pursue every opportunity possible to improve the team. So yeah, every pick would always be available on some level or another if it were me.
All right, so that is Malachi Branham going number 14 to Cleveland. We are now out of the lottery. We are heading to pick number 15. We are going to go 2 minutes and 30 seconds on each of these picks. So it's going to be a little bit quicker. Jeremy, we're going to you. You are picking for someone for LaMelo Ball to throw lobs to. There's one guy that the world needs you to pick here. I hope you make the right decision. A lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Williams and Duren on the board here, it's pretty nice to be able to make that choice. I think if you're splitting hairs, I think also because I went such big upside at 13 with Dieng, knowing that it's going to take him a little time, I think a safer pick here, and I want someone who's going to like stabilize my team. So I'm going to go with Mark Williams. I think his length and his ability to catch lobs, and he's just a bigger target And I think defensively, he's going to offer more right away than Duren will. I think Duren could certainly be better than Mark in a few years, but I think, for what Charlotte needs, and they want to be an up-tempo team, and they want to also be defensively stable, I think having a giant guy like Mark, who's also going to be a huge threat and knows exactly what his role is going to be a difference maker for them.
Goodman, I'm going to you since I know you're such a big fan of the Ball family. If you're building around LaMelo, is this a winning strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the pick in Mark Williams. I think, again, he gives you a big target on the offensive end that LaMelo can throw it to, and I think he's terrific defensively. I mean, he's so big. He's so athletic. He can impact on both ends. He's not a guy that you're going to give the ball to on the post, but there aren't a lot of those guys anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I like Williams over Duren in this situation. I really do.
Sam, is he switchable enough to be able to kind of play a modern five in a playoff series where we see teams switching everything these days?
Yeah, I don't see him as switchable. I think you can run some versatile like screen coverages with him. Like you can play flatter with Mark Williams and he can recover using his length. Look, I probably would have gone with Jalen Duren here, if only because I think that he's a better lob catcher. I think that his ability to just like go up with one hand, catch the ball on lobs, and just finish all in one fell swoop and out high point people with his leaping ability is genuinely special. Like I think he's one of the best lob catchers to enter the NBA since DeAndre Jordan. I think these two are very close, but for the particular Charlotte situation, I probably would have gone with Jalen Duren.
Yeah, I think Mark Williams is a better player, but I think we need Jalen Duren there for the highlights. So, Jeremy, you failed that test. We are
the motor was the thing.
All right, we're going to pick number 16, the Atlanta Hawks. You're building around Trae Young. Ryan, this is to you. Who you taking at number 16?
This is a gift for me. This is a gift. I had this guy 9th on my draft board. Lets me do some other things, put Clint Capella in play, John Collins potentially in play. We know those are actual things, especially with Collins, that are being discussed. I am going to go with Jalen Duren. I had him rated 9th overall on my board. Just the productivity, with that body. I think in a lot of ways he's what Trae needs. We talked about it relative to LaMelo, the last pick, the lob catching ability. Like his body, like how he initiates contact, he hit first. Also, that 37-inch vertical is impressive. I really like breaking down the film. This kid's second jump. I think that's an underrated skill for a big man. He gets down and back up again. It's important for offensive rebounds, putbacks, things like that. So outside lottery, I think this is great value with the 16th pick, Jalen Duren to the Atlanta Hawks.
Matt, my comparison for Jalen Duren has been Onyeka Okongwu. And I think that if you are taking Jalen Duren where you would have drafted Onyeka Okongwu in the top 6, then I don't know if I love it. If you can get him at 16 with an entirely different set of expectations, I think this is a really good pick with a lot of really good value.
Yeah, I mean, I think it creates some dilemmas. I mean, obviously you got a log jam there. I think where does he play? Where does Onyeka play? Obviously, yeah, Capella there as well. So fit wise, it's not great. But at 16th pick, I think it's one of these deals where you probably shouldn't overanalyze it. This guy's got a lot of upside. He's one of the youngest guys in the draft, or is he the youngest guy in the draft? I know he reclassified his senior year. So a young guy with upside. Jeremy, you touched on the motor. That's been my holdup with Jalen all along. I mean, especially when he was in high school, he's actually improved, but very selective motor. So I mean, there are some concerns there, but the upside is legitimate.
Goodman, we watched him play about 17 different times at Pete Sham last summer. You got 15 seconds here. What do you take on? What's your take on Jalen?
Well, that first time we know what happened. He didn't play the whole second half. He didn't show up. He basically overslept. But Jalen Duren is talented. It's just going to take time. He's going to be inconsistent, but he's a freak athlete with a Alonzo Mourning body.
Yeah, he looks like Dwight Howard. He's 18 years old. That is not a normal thing. All right, pick number 17. We are going back down to Houston. Sam, you're picking again for the Rockets. Who do you have?
Yeah, so again, this is a situation where I'm picking talent at the end of the day. And in this case, I'm lucky that I think the talent fits really well. I'm going Ty Washington out of Kentucky. I love the way that Ty fits in both iterations of Houston's backcourt. I think that he can play really, really well next to Jalen Green. He kind of accentuates a lot of the skills that Jalen has. Jalen's going to be able to collapse the defense with his incredible athleticism, and then kick it out to the weak side where Ty can shoot. And then he can make decisions attacking closeouts and processing the game. That's what he really excels at. And then on top of it, I think he brings some of the steadiness that sometimes Kevin Porter can lack on the offensive end, particularly just with his ability to make decisions. It could free up Kevin Porter to be more of that high level scorer that I think we all believe that Kevin Porter can be. So I really like the fit of Ty Washington here. I think that it's a really great potential fit as well with Paulo Banchero, who I just drafted in the front court. Yeah, just kind of across the board, I love this fit for Houston, and it's one of those things that I really hope we actually see on draft night.
Goodman, you went all in on Ty in the preseason. He did not have a great end to the season. I think part of that was a little bit of an ankle injury. Part of that was playing out of position. What's your take on Ty at the next level?
Yeah, I just don't think Calipari did a good enough job with Ty, to be honest. And part of it was having Severe Wheeler, and he's a ball dominant point guard who doesn't shoot it well. So I think Ty can be a Jamal Murray type of player at the next level. I really do. I think he may not be quite the explosive scorer that Murray is, but neither one's a great athlete, similar size, similar body. I think Ty is a much better passer with better feel for the game, but we just didn't see it at Kentucky.
Ryan, I want to ask you this. How much do you consider the program that players are coming from when you draft them? Like we've seen Kentucky guards, Tyler Hero, Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray, all these guys outperform where they've been drafted.
We actually drafted a Kentucky guard in Phoenix, a couple of them actually. One's pretty good. He's number 13, I think. Light skin, about 6'5", 6'6". Anyways,
Talk your shit, Ryan. Let's go.
Hey, no, we drafted a few guys that couldn't play dead in a cowboy movie either, so we won't get into those. But no, it's important. This kid in particular, I agree with Jeff. I like his touch. I love the floater, breaking him down on film.
That's another humble brag. Matt, you're number 18, Chicago Bulls.
All right, so I got excited for a second thinking that Jalen Duren could slip to this pick. I would have taken him, but so here I am. I'm going to take Tari Eason. I think Chicago has got plenty of depth in the backcourt, and so I think with Tari, he's a talented scorer that I think ultimately play either forward spot, just gives them some lineup flexibility and just another offensive punch.
Jeremy, what's your take on Tari Eason? Do you buy the shot? Can that thing come around?
Yeah, I think, mechanically it's not pretty, but he shoots well enough from the line. He's made enough like open ones that I think he'll probably shoot enough. My bigger concern with him is just that there's not a lot of diversity to, what he does on offense. It's a lot of right-hand drives. He's very effective doing that, but just like the put your head down, barrel to the rim thing is a lot harder to do in the NBA. Particularly when, you're so, strong hand dominant. The 2 times I saw him this year, he was really inconsistent, worries me a little bit. Gets in foul trouble a lot. A guy who I'm not personally as excited about, but I also think that there's only so far you can let him fall because, physically he's so good. He's so productive. I think there's definitely a chance that he figures it out. And, the fact that defensively he won't get played off the floor matters here too. So I think the upside of this pick is definitely there, but he's just not my favorite guy.
Sam, what is he if that jumper doesn't come around?
Yeah, I think he's a bigger, more versatile version of Matisse Thybulle, to be honest, because he's so big, he's so strong. Like, I think there are worlds where you could slide him down onto like smaller fives. Like, I think that he could stick on Bam Adebayo, someone like that. He could definitely stick on like a John Collins when he's down at the 5. So, Clint Capella as well. So I think he gives you real lineup versatility while having that similar ability to make plays. Like Tari Eason, the thing that really came out of the combine is that he has absolutely enormous hands, and he's so disruptive with those hands. He does such a good job. If he gets his hand on that ball, whenever he's digging down for a strip or whenever he's just trying to get into your handle, he's taking the ball. Like there's just not a way around it. And that's how he creates transition opportunities. He's a good weak side rim protector. He's just trying to make shit happen out there in a real substantial way.
Yeah. And the big thing about him is he's always going to play hard. He's athletic and he's going to play hard. And that's something that you cannot teach. All right. That was pick number 18. We're on to number 19. It's Jeff Goodman picking for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jeff, who you got?
Listen, the Timberwolves were good this past year. Kind of came out of nowhere a little bit, making the playoffs. And now I think you add a piece that can impact winning right away, and that's EJ Liddell. I think he fits well with Karl Anthony Towns on the front line. I think Liddell's gotten so much better. He's kind of that undersized 4, really, but in today's game, that's shown to work. But he can make shots from the perimeter, and the biggest thing he did this past year, he can guard now. He slimmed down a little bit, and he can guard. So I think he's perfect for what they need in Minnesota, and he's a high culture guy as well.
I love EJ Liddell. I love
Me
him.
too.
I did our scouting report for EJ Liddell with Sam, who is an Ohio State alum, who is not quite as high on EJ Liddell as I am. So, Sam, why is that?
Yeah, I just have some on-ball worries. I think that the idea of him being a small ball center is a little bit less attractive to me than someone like Grant Williams, because I don't know if he can quite anchor in the same way that Grant can, like just physically against bigger guys. I think a lot of his blocks come from the weak side, just rotating over. And I ended up with EJ, around 24, 25 on my board. Like, I think this is a completely reasonable pick. I think that once you start digging into the nuances a little bit, his game raises more questions than what the skill package would state, including the jumper. Like, I have some concerns with how flat the jumper is as he moves back beyond the NBA line as well. So just some small concerns, I would say.
Ryan, when you are drafting guys to play a role, what are things that you are looking for? Well, how do you evaluate? Can he buy into the team? Can he buy into a culture? Is he selfless? What are the things that you look for?
That's where a lot of the intel with coaches, trainers, teammates comes into play. One of the things I like about Jeff's pick here is I think this is something that Tim Connolly, the new president of Minnesota, would actually do. He's a positional fit for the Timberwolves, a stat that I thought was really good, courtesy Ohio State. Only 2 other players in the last 30 years have put up the numbers this kid has in terms of points, rebounds, assists, blocks. Jason Thompson from Ryder and Tim Duncan. Now, he's not obviously Tim Duncan, but this is a productive player. So I think a lot of it is the fit. And to Jeff's point, Minnesota's ahead of schedule. They need a win now player. A guy could potentially be in the rotation. And I really like EJ Liddell. In fact, I was hoping he was there a few picks later when I come back.
All right. So EJ Liddell goes number 19. I'm picking for San Antonio. It's their second pick of the draft. I got Shaedon Sharpe at number 9 for them. They are a team loaded with wings. I think they also need some shooting. They need upside. I think that finding a big man would be key for them, assuming that they have to deal with this Jakob Poeltl thing that's coming up in a year. But I'm going to go with another wing, and Dagan Hughes, our producer, is going to be mad at me because I don't actually have him on our list for guys that they should target. But I'm going to go with Jalen Williams from Santa Clara because it just feels like a very San Antonio Spurs thing to do, to draft a guy from Santa Clara with the number 20 pick. He's 6'6". He's got a huge wingspan. He makes threes. He's a guy that it seems like as people go back and watch more tape, he just continues to shoot up all of these draft boards and shoot up all of these rankings. And given what they did with Josh Primo last year, which kind of surprised a lot of people, I think it makes sense for them to take another Jalen Williams. He fits, he plugs some holes that they have on their roster. Jeremy, tell me why I'm crazy.
Are you sure you picked the right Jalen Williams? No, I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think Jalen, Santa Clara Jalen definitely fits kind of the way San Antonio wants to play. I think it's a nice fit also just because they have so many young perimeter pieces. And I think that, Jalen being able to kind of toggle on and off the ball, kind of play some 1, 2, and 3, kind of depending on what they do. And I know that they want to try Josh Primo more on the ball. He's someone they really believe in. I think having a guy who's just like a steady defender who can make a shot, who can run a little bit of offense, I think he fits pretty well there. So I sign off on that.
Matt, when did he first come on your radar as a prospect?
Throughout the year, and we watched some film on him, and I mean, at the combine is where he really rose up. I think with all of us. I mean, measured well, showed his versatility. I mean, talking to some coaches in that conference, think he's going to be a point guard when it's all said and done. But I mean, I think the point of it is just the versatility that he brings. Creates some advantages for a team like San Antonio.
Ryan, you got about 10 seconds here. How do you evaluate players that play in some of these smaller leagues?
It's hard. With this kid, I was a little concerned that his team lost to most of the best teams, Gonzaga, St. Mary's, but I like that he played on the ball. And I agree. I think he can be a point guard with his skill and playmaking ability.
Sam, I'm going to you for pick number 21, the Denver Nuggets. Who do you have here? This is an interesting one. They got that's going to be a team that's going to get healthy and be dangerous.
Well, boys, I know I'm in the room with a lot of Arizona guys. I'm going to take one of your own. I'm taking Dalen Terry here. He just fits in a number of different varieties and capacities for a lot of reasons. And this is a team that could use more perimeter defenders. Mike Malone has done such a great job of establishing a great defensive culture there, despite the fact, that they have Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and guys that have struggled on that end previously. Dalen Terry is the kind of guy that I think would fit really well playing next to guys like Jamal Murray, like Bones Highland, because of his defensive energy, his intensity. This is a guy that's just an energy giver when he's out there. On top of it, I love his ball handling ability. He posted a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio this year. And you watch Dalen Terry play, it's not for a lack of risk taking. Like, he's throwing like side spin, like bounce passes through tight windows, and he's trying to make things happen out there. He averaged 4 assists a game. I think there's a world where, down the road, you might be able to play this dude who's 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan on the ball a little bit, allowing Jamal Murray, allowing even Bones Highland, maybe in second units, to play off the ball. I love Dalen Terry's upside. I think he's the kind of guy you win games with. And this is a team that is really trying to win games. So Dalen Terry, number 21, Denver Nuggets.
Ryan, I know you already threw your shoulder out, patting yourself on the back for drafting Mikal Bridges. If you can get the second coming of Mikal Bridges,
and Devin Booker, Rob, but
and
don't forget that
and Devin Booker, and don't forget that one. If you can get the second coming of Mikal Bridges, why would he drop all the way to 21?
It's a good question. I really like Dalen Terry. I think the reasons he would drop to 21 and maybe they're in the 20s are just the lack of productivity at Arizona, right? He was the 5th leading scorer on the team. But I like the player in the pick. In fact, he was a guy that I'm coming back next year at 22, just because I think one of the things that's easy to forget is, how does this guy fit into the NBA? Well, this guy fits into the NBA because he can make some plays. He has good length. I think he needs to improve his shooting mechanics. His wrist was a little bit loose when I watched the film, but I like this kid. I think it's a good pick. The question they have is, can he do more than being the 5th leading scorer on the Arizona Wildcats? I think he slides in as a 3-and-D defender with some playmaking potential as well.
I totally agree. I love the kid. I love the fit. I love the player. Ryan, we are coming back to you. Pick number 22, the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, and this is one, I mean, sometimes the draft works out kind of the way you hope it would. Sometimes it goes against you. Those are the breaks. But this player I'm going to draft is, I think, somebody Memphis actually may draft because of their roster and financial situation going forward. And that's the point guard out of Tennessee, Kennedy Chandler. They have Tyus Jones, who's an unrestricted free agent. Jones was excellent, maybe the best backup point guard in the league. Obviously, John Morant's a superstar. But Kennedy Chandler, you guys know his pedigree, especially your recruiting gurus. Top 10 high school player, played for Team USA. I like his ability with the ball in his hands. He just knows how to play. I like his feel. I really like his defense. I thought that for a freshman guard, I was trying to go back and think of freshman guards who defend like that. He anticipated well. He got 2.2 steals per game, and he's skilled. Now, there are concerns, about his size. He's small. He's not very athletic. And the shooting. So that's going to be the determining factor. But you have a superstar in John Morant. You're looking for a backup point guard. This kid's a good basketball player. He knows how to defend. I think he fits right in Memphis.
Goodman, how worried are you about the size? We just said that one of the best things about him is his ability to defend. If he's probably 5'11" on a good, I don't care what he's listed at. Like, that dude is that he's not a very big man. So
no, he's small, but he fits a need. I mean, that's what you're drafting here. Like Ryan's saying, you're drafting for need as much as anything else. This is a bad point guard draft. There's no other way to say it. And, Kennedy Chandler probably goes higher than he should, only because, again, there aren't a lot of good point guards out there.
Mm-hmm. Sam, we've talked about his size before. How concerned are you? Extremely.
It's just really, really hard to be a 6-foot guard in today's NBA, especially when you're 170 pounds like Kennedy Chandler is. For as hard as he works, and I feel bad, like, it's through no fault of his own. He's done a phenomenal job improving as a shooter. He works really hard. He does all of the right things. I take no solace in saying that I'm not like a Kennedy Chandler guy. I love everything he brings to the table. It's just, it's hard to imagine a world where he doesn't get hunted on mismatches in today's NBA, given how mismatch heavy these best players in the league get.
Yeah, I think you can't measure the heart, though. And Tennessee really turned into the best team in the SEC for a stretch last season because of Kennedy Chandler. Goodman, pick number 23, the Philadelphia 76ers. Are we going to trust your process here?
I'm torn on this one. I mean, this is a tough one for me because the guy I probably liked the best here, I'm not sure he's the best fit, which is Kendall Brown. I think Kendall Brown's going to be a really good NBA player, and he didn't get the opportunity to show what he could do at Baylor. I think he's a better offensive player than people realize and can be a really good defender, but I just don't know if they need him. Do you take a backup big man like Walker Kessler here? I think maybe you just go Blake Wesley and just take the best player on the board, the guy with the highest upside, South Bend native who nobody saw this coming. Didn't shoot it great, but I think that'll get better. He's a worker from everything I've been told, but good first step, smooth wing. So I think you just go with the best player available at this point if you're Philly, and I go Blake Wesley with the highest upside.
Yeah, Jeremy, this is definitely an upside play. Do you buy the shooting? Because he's not with what I think his percentage is 41 from 2, 31 from 3 this past season. He's got to get better at that.
Yeah. So I saw Notre Dame a few times because it's a quick drive from in Chicago, and I think he can shoot. Like from watching him shoot around, like it's not like there's like a lack of ability to shoot. I think what he really needs to develop is just more of like the confidence and sort of like the catch and shoot skill set, where it's he needs to be able to catch it, make a quick decision whether he's gonna shoot it or drive or whatever. Like I don't question that he can get into the paint. Like I think it was a weird sort. I think he had a good situation, but I think he's just so like raw in some ways. He didn't play a ton of high level basketball. He wasn't very touted when he got to Notre Dame. So everything we're seeing here is him kind of learning. So like, I think the upside's definitely there. He's someone I definitely would be interested in this range. And I think, Blake, his body is probably going to be able to put on a lot of muscle. And I think there are a lot of plays, where he got stuffed at the rim, but, at some point in his career, he's going to start dunking. So the upside's there. Got to figure out whether he's going to be on or off the ball. I think more likely he's an off ball sort of slasher, but a good development plan. I think you can get a lot out of him. So I like the pick here. I don't know if Philly's the team, but someone should take him.
Yeah, he's definitely has upside. And at the end of the day, everybody needs great players, and shooting for upside at this point of the draft, there's really no cost to doing so. Goodman, we are going back to you. Pick number 24, the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a team. They're very, very good. They have some good players. They took Boston to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals without Chris Middleton. Who are you taking?
Walker Kessler. I think they need a big here. Brook Lopez was hurt for the majority of this season. He's not getting any younger. I don't love Kessler. I got to admit, but I think he's kind of the best true big on the board right now, and he fits a need for at this point, which I think kind of Ryan can probably weigh in on this. But if you're picking in the mid-20s, how much does need supersede? Because you're not talking about a big disparity in talent. So I think in this situation, I would probably go with Walker Kessler, who's a great defensive big man.
Yeah, go ahead. Answer that, Ryan.
Yeah, this is a pick I can see the Milwaukee Bucks actually making. They have financial issues as a luxury tax team. Their payroll's very expensive. And if you look at the history of the late first round, especially the later you get into the mid-20s and closer to 30, most of the players fail in that range. That's just historically what it is. So if you find a guy who's a positional fit, who can give you some rotational minutes, even as a backup, as your 9th, 10th man off the bench, and keep in mind, if you hit in that range, like Memphis did a few years ago with Desmond Bane, that is so valuable because you get a player who produces and you get that salary slot for 4 years, which really, if you have financial issues, lets you do a whole lot else. So I think this is a pick they would actually make. I mean, Kessler's shot blocking is incredible. He's obviously a little bit stiff, but I can see them, saying, let's lock in a potential backup center at a low cost for the next 4 years.
Dauster Matt, stiff too, so don't worry.
Matt, Walker Kessler, one of the best shot blockers that we've seen in college. Will that translate? Are you worried about that translating to the next level?
No, I think the shot blocking translates. My only concern here with this pick is taking a guy that doesn't fit the coach's system well. Bud likes playing stretch bigs, floor spacing with Giannis, and I'm personally not buying Walker Kessler's ability to stretch the floor. His mechanics aren't broken. I don't know if it's I don't know if he's a shot maker when it's all said and done. So that would be my concern. But he's a good player, and the shot blocking does translate.
Sam, you got 10 seconds. Do you think the shooting happens for him?
I don't know if the shooting happens, but I do think it's a real defensive scheme fit. They do run a pretty heavy drop under Bud, and that is going to be helpful for them, I think, off the bench. But the shooting is a real concern. I agree with Matt.
All right. So that is Walker Kessler, who I wanted at number 25 for San Antonio. I'm making that pick. I think that they need front court depth here. And I think that there are still some good bigs on the board. The guy that I am the biggest fan of, and I don't know if this is going to end up being a reach, but I really like Christian Coloco. I think that you can make the argument, given his switchability, given his rim protection skills, the fact that he can make some free throws, maybe that jumper could end up coming around one day. I think that he is the guy that could end up being the best kind of defensive only piece that you can find, switchable, someone that could play in a playoff series one day. So I'm going to take Christian Coloco, number 25 for the San Antonio Spurs. But we have a lot of Arizona guys on here. So somebody tell me why that's a horrible pick, because I know it probably is. Goodman, go ahead. I see you nodding.
No, I'm a huge Coloco guy because, again, I think he's the best big man defender in this draft. I mean, you saw it last year. He can switch. He can guard perimeter guys. And he's just gotten better and better and better every year. And his confidence was the biggest reason why he made the jump this year. I don't think he really had it over the first couple of years of his career at Arizona. So I love Coloco. He's not going to give you much offensively. Let's be honest. He's going to be a rim runner. But the biggest thing he's going to be able to do is on the defensive end, block and alter shots and switch out on smaller dudes.
Jeremy, what do you take? What's your take on Coloco?
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth with him and Kessler, and I ended up with Kessler ahead. But the one advantage Coloco is going to have is and you kind of touched on it. He is a lot more mobile. He can move his feet. He has a physical presence, but he also gives you a little bit more versatility in what you want to do than like your typical sort of shot blocking big. And he's gotten a lot better in a short amount of time. So offensively, I guess that's where my concern lies. His finishing is going to have to improve. He's probably not going to shoot. But is he like a very legit, like potentially really good backup? Yeah, no question to me.
Yeah. That's kind of why I landed on him with that pick is I'll roll the dice and hope that San Antonio can figure out a way to get him to shoot, and just trust the fact that he's going to be someone that can't get isolated and put on an island defensively. All right, Sam, we are going to you. Pick number 26. You are drafting for the third time tonight for the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, so this one's purely a talent play for me down here. It's my last guy that I have in tier 4 of my draft class here. It's Jaden Hardy from the G League Ignite. Do I love the idea of, having him in the same backcourt as a bunch of shot gunners like Jalen Green, Kevin Porter, even Ty can get a little bit shot happy from time to time, but I don't. But at the end of the day, I'm taking talent here. And I think Jaden's ability to create shots at a really high level is very underrated. I think he has, in terms of like technical craft, the best handle in this class. Like there's no antidote for just being able to run around dudes like Jaden Ivey can. But in terms of just the technical ability to, change direction, change pace, I think his handle's exceptionally tight. I also loved his last month of the season for the Ignite. He was horrible for the first few months, but he really kind of figured out that mix of being able to make plays as a passer. I think he's an underrated passer when his mindset is geared toward that. And then on top of it, he made 40% of his threes over the last month and a half of the season on 10 attempts per game. I think he can generate those shots at a really high level. This is a Jordan Poole upside swing for me, where if it works, I have a guy that can create shots, and there is very little more valuable in today's NBA than guys that can knock down shots and create them out of isolation.
Matt, when you look at a guy that was a top 5 recruit coming out of his class that might have slid down the draft boards a little bit, does that play into your mind at all? Like he crushed it at every level of basketball until he got here, and maybe it just wasn't a great fit where he was the year before he's drafted.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's something you got to take a look at, and I think one advantage some of us have is we don't have the red tape that NBA teams do as far as high school events. And so I saw him in high school, and I saw that crazy raw talent and upside. And I think he was a little bit of a victim of going to the professional setup probably too soon, because he's got a lot of talent. He's just, his feel for the game, his basketball IQ, just some of these little things that, just lack of polish really exposed him. And I think kind of painted him in a bad light. But I like this pick a lot as an upside play.
I mean, and that's the risk of going to the G League instead of going to college, right? Playing against grown men.
Grown men, absolutely.
All right. That was pick number 26. Number 27, the Miami Heat. Matt, we're going right back to you. Who do you got for the Heat?
Yeah, similar to Sam's approach with that last pick, I'm going with the best player available here. I'm going with Marjon Beauchamp. This is a kid I've known him for a couple of years, and how far he's come has really shown me that he's got growth mindset. Terrific motor, tough kid, defends, active, slasher. I still like him to see him continue to improve his outside shooting, but at this stage in the draft, I'm really excited about this pick.
Goodman, he is one of
his story is incredible. Like, you can probably go a little bit deeper into that, Matt, a little bit about his story, but right.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
No. So a couple of years ago, I was called by my friend Frank Massiano, who started Chameleon BX. He's a crazy. I call him Crazy Frank. He's Hell's trainer, and started Chameleon BX, where he's kind of doing like what G League Ignite's doing, getting guys to skip college and just train for a year. He started during the pandemic, so it kind of blew up in their face. And Marjon was down and out, and but credit to Frank and Marjon. The things that Frank applied as far as getting his body together and applying discipline to his life, the kid dramatically improved and kind of turned his weaknesses into strengths, and really has impressed me.
Yeah, went to junior college. Yeah, went to junior college for a while, put up crazy numbers, and really went to the G League Ignite as an afterthought, from what I'm told.
Yeah, absolutely.
Turned into an NBA prospect when that was kind of never the thought with him initially going there. So cool story.
Yeah, Matt, when did you first realize that he was a guy that kind of had this potential when he was in that program?
I saw the potential in high school. He had a reputation for bad body language, selective motor. He was really thin, and now if I would do a scout report on him right now, not all of those things have been scratched. I think he's a tough kid that plays hard, and he's improved his shooting too. If he can continue to improve that area, that's definitely his swing skill. But at 27 again, I just think that's a high value pick.
Yeah,
and it fits their toughness, right?
He fits Miami's
toughness.
Yeah, if you survive Frank Massiano, you can handle Riley's system too.
Sam, how much have you seen him? You got about 15 seconds here.
Yeah, good amount. I think that what Matt brings up is important when considering all of these other prospects where we talk about their weaknesses. All these guys are so young. They have so much time in the world to be able to change their weaknesses into strengths, especially when they're motor based and questions about mindset and things like that.
All right. So I am picking number 28 for the Golden State Warriors, the team that we're all going to be watching here in about 15 minutes. So I think we all kind of know what they are. Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, and pretty soon Jordan Poole. So they have a pretty big salary. So they're looking for people that can be cheap, reliable depth, immediate impact kind of role players that fit into this system that they want to play. And there's a number of guys that are kind of in that wing that I have the wing category that I have written down. But the guy that's the most interesting to me is Wendell Moore from Duke. I think that he is another player that was a former McDonald's All-American. He's a guy that really shot it this year. And if you believe in the shot, I think it was at 41% he ended for the whole season. He was a playmaker. He's got a long wingspan. He can kind of fit into that versatile mold that makes sense in the NBA. There's a lot of options that you can go here. I like Wendell Moore the most out of all of them. Jeremy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Wendell is one of the players I'm really excited about in this draft, actually. I think he's the rare, underrated Duke guy, if that's fair to say. I just, for whatever reason, and I think partially because there was so much star power in their team, I think people who paid attention noticed, but he didn't get quite enough credit nationally for what he. I guess he won awards. So that's not true, but maybe in the context of the draft, just sort of what he did to kind of elevate Duke. If you think about the type of player that you need to sort of complement star talent, having a guy like Wendell who, can bring the ball up, he can run a little bit of pick and roll, he can shoot and knock down an open shot. He's a good passer, really good transition player. He's bigger than you think, just physically. He's not super tall, but he's got a long frame and he has a physical presence defensively. He's going to be able to switch stuff. So I think it's sort of a lesser, what I was talking about a little bit with Dyson Daniels, being able to be a positionless kind of cog alongside stars. Wendell kind of does the same thing to a lesser degree. So I like that pick, particularly for Golden State with, stars in place already.
Ryan, we got about 20 seconds here. When you're drafting and trying to find a way to make it all work under the salary cap or under the luxury tax, how much of a consideration are things like this?
Well, I think for most teams it is, but for Joe Lacob and the Warriors, they just spend, baby. The revenue they bring in is incredible, especially this year going back to the finals. It'd be a very interesting test for the NBA if the Warriors continue to blow the luxury tax and the repeater tax out of the water.
We are going right back to you, Ryan. Pick number 29. You're drafting. It's Memphis. It's their second pick in the first round, number 29.
Yeah, so with our first pick with the Grizzlies at 22, we went Kennedy Chandler, the point guard out of Tennessee, who we discussed. At 29, I was hoping this guy was here because the Grizzlies are a good team. As you guys know, they have the second best record in the NBA this year, second in the West, only to Phoenix. They advanced in the playoffs. I do not want another rookie on my roster after Kennedy Chandler. So I'm going to draft Nikola Jovic out of Mega Vizura in Serbia. Jovic was born in England. His father was a pro basketball player. This kid grew up playing water polo and basketball in Serbia. He was a top prospect in the ABA League, which, as these guys know, is pretty good league in terms of developing prospects. Really good size, 6'9.5" barefoot, 7-foot wingspan. He played primarily point guard, which I like that from a developmental perspective. I don't think that's where he fits in to the NBA, at least initially, but getting reps with the ball in your hands, I think for young players, invaluable. And if I'm Zach Kleiman and the guys in Memphis's front office, along with Taylor Jenkins, I am begging this kid to stay in Europe and develop. We'll bring you over in a year or two. He could be one of the best players in the European continent in a couple of years. And then with a good, talented Grizzlies team, you're adding to strength if you bring this kid over in a few years.
Goodman, I just want to be clear. That's Nikola Jovic, not Nikola Jokic. Okay. There's two different players. He did not pick the MVP. Okay.
I'm just upset that Ryan McDonough, being the former North Carolina Tar Heel, didn't take Brady Manick here. That's where I thought he was headed.
I was going to draft Walker Kessler, then cut him for transferring to Auburn, but that's a different story. It would have been a little spiteful on my part.
Sam, we got about 45 seconds here. Put a bow on Nikola's game for us.
Yeah, I think that Ryan hit the main points. I mean, he's a point forward at the end of the day. Really, really high level passer. I also like the shot mechanics. I think he's going to knock down shots off the catch at a pretty reasonable level. This is a guy that made a real impact at the U19 World Cup last year, especially statistically. He was very, very good for Serbia. I'm real worried about the defense. I have no idea who he guards in the NBA is my real concern here. But at 29, if you can get a guy that's 6'11" in shoes and has all sorts of passing and shooting ability, I mean, it's totally reasonable pick. Like, I think it's a rational, smart decision in many ways.
Yeah, and Nemanja Bjelica is playing in the NBA Finals. He doesn't really guard anybody, so
yeah,
I think there's a role for this kid down the road.
Yeah,
fair enough. All right, Sam, you have the last pick of the first round. We're coming back to you. You need to make Denver a national or an NBA title team with this pick. All the pressure's on you. Take us home.
30th overall picks, bringing them to the title. Let's go. Yeah, look, I have two guys left in my top 25. It looks like it's Jake LaRavia and Christian Brown. I'm going to go LaRavia. I have him one spot higher than Christian Brown. LaRavia, I think, is an outstanding shooter at 6'8". I know that the volume wasn't there in college, but I think it was more a matter of decision-making and wanting to make the right play while he played next to Alondas Williams, who was so aggressive on the ball and trying to hit home runs constantly. And LaRavia is a very, very high-level passer, very, very high-level processor of the game. I think that pairing him with Nikola Jokic, not Jovic, is going to really, really play well off of Jokic's cutting or Jokic's passing with LaRavia's cutting ability and his floor spacing ability. I already took a wing in Dalen Terry for the Denver Nuggets, and I think that taking a guy who's more of like a 4-3 hybrid forward, that can maybe spell Michael Porter, given that we don't necessarily feel awesome about Michael Porter's health long term. I really like the idea of them just building up depth in the front court with skilled guys that would fit well with Nikola Jokic.
Matt, I think this is the perfect example of what fit means at the next level, right? Alondas Williams was the star for Wake Forest all year long, and Jake LaRavia is the guy that goes with the 30th pick in the first round.
No, sure. I mean, I think comparing those two, I mean, Alondas Williams, I think the question with him is how good will he be as a complementary guy rather than a player at Wake Forest where the ball's in his hands and he's asked to pretty much do everything. LaRavia can blend, in a good way. And so I think, Sam, your points with, Denver's offense obviously being built around Jokic is, it's perfect. He stretches it. He's tough, slasher. I personally, for a lot of the same reasons, probably would have gone Kendall Brown because I think he would fit really well with Denver as far as his slashing abilities, just an elite athlete, potential defensively. But again, very similar points that you made, Sam, of why you went with LaRavia.
Jeremy, you got about 15 seconds. Give me your take on Jake LaRavia.
Yeah, I like him. He grew on me. I didn't see him all year until the ACC tournament, and I'm sitting there, up close. And his competitiveness competitiveness really pops. So that was a nice surprise, in addition to the passing and the other stuff that he brings. I like the pick.
Well, listen, guys, that was the full first round mock draft from the field of 68. I want from each of you, before we get out of here, I just want real quick, the best player that you have left on your board that was not drafted in the first round. Sam, we're going to go to you first.
Yeah, like I said, Christian Brown, I'm a big fan. I think he's going to shoot it at a high level. I love the way he closes out on offensive players on the defensive end. Actually, I think he's constantly on balance. And given the way that you have to scramble in the NBA on defense, I think he's going to be a very, very effective player on that end. So I'm a Christian Brown fan.
Jeremy?
Yeah, for me, it's Patrick Baldwin Jr., who I'm still continuing to back here. I think despite all that he's gone through and the rough year that he had, I still think there's a good NBA player in there. He's going to need to go to the right situation when there's not pressure. But I don't think he's ever really played in a situation where there's a great guard next to him who can get him shots and, you can kind of insulate him. So I really think he's a good project. He's someone I would have considered in the 20s had I had a pick after 15, which I did not.
Ryan?
Christian Brown would be the player for me as well. If I could throw in one name, though, to keep an eye on late in the first round, talking to people around the league, that's Josh Minott from Memphis. Obviously, he didn't do a whole lot for the Tigers on the court, but talking to coaches and people around the program and some NBA guys, if you want to be patient, put this kid in the G League. It's a home run swing. You could strike out, but a lot of NBA teams that I've talked to are intrigued by that kid's talent in this late first, early second round range.
Wait, does that mean you found Larry Brown? Because nobody knows where Larry Brown is.
So. You haven't been out to the Hamptons lately, Jeff. Go to a fish fry or something out there.
He's supposed to be in Memphis helping Betty.
Get your Nantucket Reds on and go to a clam bake with a glass of sangria, and you might bump into him out there.
Good idea.
Matt, who you got?
Well, I already mentioned Kendall Brown, but I think there's several of the young guys that didn't get a chance to do a whole lot. My knots of the world, Peyton Watson, Max Christie. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys in a few years we look back, be like, all right, these guys tapped into their potential and probably should have been first round picks.
Goodman?
Yeah, I like Kendall Brown. I really do. I think, again, he's got great feel for the game. Good defender, not a great shooter, but if there's one skill that can be improved with work, and I think the kid will be a worker in the NBA, it'll be shooting. So I think Kendall Brown's going to take some time, but he could be a really good NBA player someday.
Yeah, my favorite is Christian Brown. You guys already said it. Shooter, athletic, defends, fits a role, tough as hell, is going to be competitive, which means we are done. Let's go watch Golden State.